I'm Joe Gig Werks, the managing partner of Gig Werks and president of ProjectReady. And today we're continuing our webcast series around the modernization of the enterprise, SharePoint 2016 and beyond, with advanced workflows and forms with our partner today, Nintex. So a little bit about Gig Werks. Gig Werks has been around since 2001, at which time we became a gold partner of Microsoft and have been ever since. We are virtual technology specialists for Microsoft's New York EPG group and won a lot of awards within the community and have built a deep and long relationship with Microsoft as exemplified by our virtual technology specialist status. And with that, we got access to all sorts of information that only the top partners in the world get from Microsoft, including advanced training on the modern application development model, which you'll be hearing about today. We work with a lot of industries and particularly around professional services, and over the last year or so have released our own product line, ProjectReady, which is to give you control and visibility over your project portfolios and control over your documents and their distribution. So just a little bit of housekeeping. You're also going to get a survey at the end of today. We do have offerings around an assessment of your enterprise. You can use your SharePoint deployment planning services dollars and Microsoft funding, if appropriate, to help your enterprise really examine their options in this time of change as it relates to the shift to Office 365 and the cloud. So a little background on solution architecture then and now. As you move to 2016, and I'm going to go ahead on my sort of punchline here, you really can no longer continue to develop solutions for SharePoint in the traditional way. And the traditional way, then and now, then was monolithic solutions requiring server-side code, having to cycle down the farm, which causes service disruptions. It takes a while to release these solutions, and there's a delayed return on business value back to your clients inside the enterprise. Further, those customizations were dependent not only on .NET, but on the specific version of .NET on the farm that you were working with at the time. Wind ahead several years later, and about 4 years ago when we were trained in Redmond about this, the modern app model evolved, where there is nothing deployed to the farm directly. Sort of what's old is new again, in that modern app solutions are just that, they're applications. And with that, they increase over time. You can extend the solution. As you extend that solution and mature it over time, you really can drill into that user experience focus, which is key and critical to success, minimizes IT involvement and spend, and there's no downtime to deploy or to implement these solutions, nor are you bound by .NET or any technology at that point. It's fully at your disposal. So WSPs and legacy customizations were what we all engaged in the industry to create feature-rich horizontal or industry-specific solutions for our customers. And they were traditionally built as WSPs, and they had common functions around site provisioning, authentication, using InfoPath forms to front-end these processes, connect to SQL sources. And they were deployed at the farm level, which is one of the major disadvantages, and it was pretty significant. For one WSP can affect another WSP and destabilize your farm. You were limited to what version of .NET, let alone application set you had to build these customizations, which restrains you in using the latest and greatest to build your applications and solutions on the go forward. Difficult to scale. And again, because it's deployed directly at the farm, you have service outages. These service outages are compounded again by the potential of destabilization through having intrusive low-level integrations to the farms. You have negative side effects. Even if you don't bring them to the farm, one WSP can cause failure to another or your entire farm at once. And with that, it becomes difficult to remove from an environment and puts a considerable cost burden and burden to move forward and take advantage of new platform releases on SharePoint as they come out from the manufacturer, because now you have to test, rebuild, tweak, and redeploy. And the big one, as I alluded to at the beginning, it simply does not work in the cloud or in hybrid environments. And so the very simple and direct point that we like to make off of this series is you will continue to build and customize solutions. Just don't do it in a way that you can't take with you as you go forward. And so how do you move forward? There are three essential ways. You can build your own apps. This was our own journey around ProjectReady, our software company that we launched, and where we took tons of existing IP and then rebuilt them into modern, scalable, finished work. But you can build your own apps, and this is something that Gig Werks can help you do. Or you can buy turnkey solutions, such as our own. And the third approach that has great appeal is application as a platform, and in this case, quite specifically, Nintex. So it is just simply quicker and easier to rebuild WSPs and Visual Studio workflows off of the Nintex platform. And the ROI on that is really quite significant for all the reasons we enumerated earlier. Less development time, more stable, guaranteed to work with future releases, a lengthy list of advantage to the Nintex suite. And I'm not going to spend much time on this, but that app model, which be it, again, build your own, buy a finished turnkey, or a platform, in our case, we took over 12,000 hours worth of IP, and about 6,000 hours later have grown our own product set, ProjectReady, our collaboration engine, our integrations to Outlook. They're all part of that journey, and I will underscore once again that Gig Werks is in a unique position, having done custom services, built our own apps, partnered quite successfully, one of the number one partners with Nintex worldwide, that we really understand what your options are as it relates to how you're going to modernize and how you're going to modernize your enterprise. All right, and just let me give a brief introduction to Nintex and its workflow capabilities. Nintex itself has been on that journey, starting out as a farm-level customization set and moving along to modern apps. Number one ISV for Microsoft in the world, Microsoft ISV Partner of the Year. Nintex has considerable benefits in terms of ROI. Its templates are reusable. You can even save templates within those templates. Makes it much easier to share on online business practices, reduce IT burden, and a number of just really rich features that you just either had to do full custom Visual Studio with, or in this case, you can't bring it with you, or you can use Nintex, which allows you to create state machine workflows and all sorts of loopbacks and very complex processes in a simple visual interface. And as I turn this over to Brad, and Brad will bring up some of these newer features that are out there, Nintex has continued to expand its offering into the Nintex Workflow Cloud, which is completely agnostic of SharePoint, has models to work and help you deploy their products both on-prem, in the cloud, and where SharePoint doesn't even play. And they have a new rich reporting set called Hawkeye. Don't want to steal too much of Brad's thunder. Let me turn it over to Brad Orlick, technical evangelist for Nintex.
You're too kind. Thank you, Joe. But hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Joe. My name is Brad Orlick. I'm with Nintex, and let's go ahead and jump into. I only have one slide. I have one slide I want to share with you, just because I think that tees up everything very well. And then after that, we'll actually jump into product, because I think our product's pretty slick, and it's much more exciting to see than a whole bunch of slides. So that being said, what you should be seeing on your screen right now is a platform for digital workflow automation. So as Joe had mentioned, there was those times when WSPs, deploying code out to SharePoint made a lot of sense. We started there here at Nintex ourselves. We were actually founded in 1999 by a couple of pretty nice guys from Australia doing a lot of consulting work in the SharePoint space, and they found that they really needed to automate processes inside of SharePoint themselves, and writing custom code all the time to do that was it was a non-starter. So what they needed was a tool that would allow them to get common tasks done, like when a document showed up inside of a library, have sophisticated approvals happen, or be able to work with the metadata in bulk and iterate through it, as Joe had mentioned. So a lot of great functionality. We thought, hey, you know what, you can do this with custom code. Let's do that with a tool that actually is just a workflow, drag and drop workflow designer. So hence Nintex Workflow was born. So that's our core. Where we really started was Nintex Workflow. But gradually over time, our platform had matured, because we realized that things like having a form as a front end for a complex business process made a lot of sense. So we brought Nintex Forms to the market. So Nintex Workflow and Forms, and actually under our new licensing models, it's a suite. We actually include all of that. In addition to that, we wanted to take it to the next level, because at the end of the day, you and everyone else has a cell phone in their pocket. So having that arguably a very powerful computing device in your pocket, and having that ubiquity of it being everywhere, really having the ability to leverage, that process on the go that you've automated with Nintex Workflow and Forms was really, really powerful. So we introduced Nintex Mobile. So Nintex Mobile is a standalone app. It's available for iOS, Android, Windows Modern, so basically Windows 8 and above, both the PC-based and the mobile phones. For the three of us still out there with those, you can consume the Nintex Mobile form layouts in this freely available Nintex Mobile app. But I'm also going to talk about something else we've introduced, which is App Studio. So that's a way to essentially build out your own custom branded apps. So I'll give you a quick look at that. But once we've automated process, once we've given it a front end, we need to plug it into a lot of disparate content systems at this point, because not everything we're doing is inside of SharePoint necessarily. We might have things inside of Salesforce or Dropbox or you name it. So we've built our Nintex connectors out to offer a low-code cloud integration type of solution to you, so you don't have to get into the muckety-muck of having to build out REST calls and write custom code to interact with those various services. It's worth pointing out that whenever I talk about that our platform certainly scales as well. So even if we don't have a first-party connection, you can still connect Nintex workflows into virtually any other system that has an API. So anything with a SOAP, REST endpoint, speaking directly to SQL databases or Oracle databases, we can do all that as well. So there's a highly scalable nature to our solutions. After that, we have document generation, and document generation was net new for Nintex about, it's going on 2 years now. We acquired a company called DrawLoop. They were doing a lot of great stuff in the Salesforce space around document generation. And we said, you know what, we really need to incorporate that into our platform to offer an end-to-end type of solution. So DrawLoop, again, still lives inside the Salesforce App Exchange, but we've also brought that core document generation capability over to our Nintex workflow stack as well. So, think about building out things like pitch books or contracts or, gosh, you name it. You can generate any kind of contract. It could be a summary report, inspection reports, etc. So easily insert metadata from your workflow process directly into a Microsoft Word template, for example, and have it save out as a PDF. And then with our connectors, send it off as a DocuSign package. So again, that's kind of the beauty of our suite, is that we're trying to be an end-to-end place where you can automate a lot of process. And then lastly, you're going to see on this particular slide, Nintex Hawkeye. So this is another new entry for us, came out over the summertime, and really once we've automated process with Nintex, what's the next logical evolution of that? Well, it would really be around the analytics, the performance metrics of those processes in which we've automated. Maybe we want to see if there's a process that we need to enhance or retool or coach people on. Are we gaining any kind of ROI? So we need to be able to answer those questions, and Nintex Hawkeye allows us to do that, thus taking it from just business process automation or workflow and content automation to really a business process improvement story. So very, very powerful tool set. And Joe also did mention our forthcoming Nintex Workflow Cloud offering. That's actually an advanced preview right now, and it will be going into general availability next week. So we're actually launching that. It's net new. It's something completely different, not designed to really replace anything we're doing in the SharePoint world, be it on-prem or SharePoint Online. It's really there to complement it, because as I mentioned earlier, when you look at the way we've modeled our pricing structure, we now give you all of this capability. So workflow, forms, mobile, connectors, document generation, Hawkeye, NWC, they're all one contiguous platform, and you can simply consume across whatever systems make sense. So if you have workloads that are, Salesforce, Dynamics, Workday in nature, and they don't necessarily have any place to live inside of your existing SharePoint portal, the beauty of it, NWC would allow you to build out that workload. And then obviously we have the ability to connect across those platforms. Very compelling. But as I mentioned, I'm done with slides. I want to show you some stuff that actually is pretty cool, arguably. So let's go ahead and get out of PowerPoint here. Now again, because the theme of the webinar is really modernizing the enterprise as well, or modernizing our SharePoint world, I've decided to go ahead and fire up a demo environment of SharePoint 2016, because there's a fair amount of interesting things that were added into the SharePoint on-prem bits and then obviously with an eye to that hybrid type of scenario. So I want to show you what our product looks like in that space, as well as how we can integrate into those hybrid types of scenarios. So what you're seeing here, again, nothing too fancy. It's just my Acme portal. I'm logged in as one Richard Rowe. You're going to notice up here. I'll go through parts of a workflow process, but I've got a couple different actors. So again, Richard would be my one participant. Additionally, I'm also logged into another desktop, and you'll notice this is Jane Doe. So Jane's going to be my approver in this particular scenario. And then also, completely outside of my SharePoint world, on-prem, I have Office 365. So I have SharePoint Online, and I have a document library up here, and I'm logged in as one handsome devil, aka myself, Brad. So you see that, you know, essentially we're going to be taking documents from on-prem, we're going to push some things up to the cloud, and show you how easy it is to do that in the workflow logic without any kind of data loading tool sets or, you know, migration tools. These are just things that we can easily orchestrate process across these myriad of different environments easily. So hopping back into SharePoint 2016, I'm going to go ahead and navigate over my sales and marketing portal. All right, and we see that I have a document review portal here. So this is really just a document library, and at this point, you know, maybe I want to go ahead and get this set of documents through some kind of process where I've got a review happening on-prem with some participants. Maybe I have Brad, aka myself. I've got Brad out there in Office 365 land. We want Brad to go ahead and review this document because he's one of our mobile workers who's not really coming back into the firewall to get into 2016. We've kind of forked things out and built out a true hybrid type of environment. But again, we still need to orchestrate this process across all these various constituencies. So I want to show you how easy that is. So in this case, what I want to do first is I need a document to put in here to show you that, you know, it's not a cooking show. I want to show you kind of live how this stuff happens, and of course I can't see. There's my Word. So I'm going to go ahead and created doc for webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. All right. So at this point, we're just going to call this, you know, modernizing your enterprise with Gig Werks. Oops. S. Perfect. Very sophisticated, fancy document there. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I've got a document here. I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this right into my SharePoint 2016 document library. And you'll see I've got the doc here. Everything's all great. But at this point now, one of the nice things about Nintex is we have the ability to kick off a workflow based on this item being created, it being modified, so on and so forth. At this case, I want to go ahead and kick it off manually because I want to show you some things that are interesting about Nintex. So I'm going to click on this distributed review process. And you'll see on your screen that we've got a graphical representation of how this workflow is going to go ahead and execute. So we're actually doing a couple things in tandem in these two parallel branches. We're running through the flexi task on-prem. So what we're doing is we're sending a approval task to both whoever instantiated the workflow, in this case that would be Richard, as well as Richard's manager, which in this case would be Jane. And then simultaneously we're going to take this document and push it up to Office 365, to that document library I showed you. And the reason why I kind of wanted to pick this is traditionally some of the constructs I'm showing you, such as pushing a file up to Office 365 as part of a workflow, I'd have to write some kind of custom code to achieve that. Whereas with Nintex, simply drag and drop a connector to Office 365 into my workflow, and I'm off to the races. So it's that easy. After that, and I probably won't take you through the entire workflow, but typically this scenario would be, are we looking for things like a rejection, be it on-prem or up in the cloud, and then aggregating the results and sending notifications out. So, whatever we wanted to do in this case, it's pretty straightforward, but after this rejection or this conditional evaluation, we can have the workflow literally do whatever we want to do. But again, a sophisticated or at least mildly sophisticated scenario to take you through briefly. So I'm going to go ahead and start this workflow process. And again, the big thing that we run into is a mobile workforce. We have lots of people working in different ways on these particular processes. So again, we've got, Richard who has to go through and approve this particular process. So we see that Richard has now received an email. And a couple of interesting things about Nintex workflow. I can easily pick up the document and attach it to an outbound email. I can do a couple different things as far as approving this goes. So I could do that traditional SharePoint type of experience by, clicking on a link inside of my email and navigating back into a task form to approve this. And you'll see, we've got an Nintex form associated with this task, and the power of that would be the fact that I can obviously make this a much more attractive form. I don't have to leverage, a deprecated technology like InfoPath, for example. And on top of it, I could consume this on multiple different devices. I just happen to be in a browser on a what is essentially a PC in this case. But I can approve, I can reject, I can delegate, I can capture my comments in here. If I just bang out some keys. Notice too, I can also pick up metadata associated with that document itself. Now in this case, I didn't populate the other fields, and I'm actually going to show you kind of a neat trick that again doesn't need any custom code to be able to put metadata first with your documents. Even that graphical representation of where the workflow currently is, I can get back to that and see that in-progress activities change into this yellow, and I can tell that the workflow is currently doing something. I can even get back to the tasks through here as well. So just trying to make it a little more dynamic and consumable for your various users. Now, if I wanted to simply approve this task, I could do so just using the form here to capture my response, but that's a little simplistic. Maybe I want to have a little bit more flexibility. So going back into my email, you'll notice on this task notification that I have lazy approval enabled. So lazy approval is a capability, and forgive us for the name, but we were founded by Australians. Lazy for our Australian friends is just simply another term for efficient. So think of this as efficient approval. You may want to call it executive approval inside of your organization, etc. But in this case, we're just using that term of lazy approval. But the beauty of lazy approval is, with natural language, I can simply reply to this email. So what we're looking at is this particular term right up here, and by default we capture yes, no, approve, reject, standard terms. But this is actually a customizable term store, so I can respond to this task using, again, natural language. In this case, if I go ahead and hit send, it'll go ahead and reply to that task and process it as a completed response. If I go back here, I'm going to go ahead and close this guy out, and we'll go back into our workflow history just to kind of see where the workflow progress is. Because as we go through and we start approving things, things are going to start changing. So you're going to notice that these tasks will be pending, and then I can even further drill in and look at a detailed view of the particular workflow. So as things like tasks become, responded to, I will be able to store all of these responses, all the telemetry against the execution of actions in the workflow. I can store that into an auditable database as well. So if I have compliance or regulatory types of things that I need to concern myself with, essentially the stay out of an orange jumpsuit kind of situations, Nintex can help you with that out of the ability to not have to rely on any kind of automatic trimming of my workflow history and the such that we're used to in standard SharePoint deployments. So again, workflow is going to go ahead and process this. At this point, what I'm going to do is go ahead and minimize this down. I'm hopping over to my SharePoint Online environment, and you're going to notice I have a little notification up here. Look, I have a task. And if I refresh, what you're going to see up here as well is my created doc for webinar. So as you can see, the document got pushed up to my Office 365 portal, modernizing your enterprise with Gig Werks. Yay, that's fantastic. At this point, if I go into my email for my notification as Brad's got heads up letting him know that he has a task to review this document. Looks great, and essentially what we're doing here is we're kicking off an Nintex workflow inside of the SharePoint Online document library. So pretty cool. It's worth pointing out that in addition to those other ways that I've already shown you in which you can reply to tasks, a really interesting way, I don't think I've got it hooked up to this environment, but there's actually an Outlook plugin. So we can do approve and reject buttons inline inside of your email, and this will work in Office 365, so with your Outlook web apps, but it'll also work with SharePoint 2013 and above. So, and again, I don't think I've got that wired up to be turned on for the day. Yeah, I'd have to log in, but this is just another little free component to make responding to tasks as convenient for your users as possible. Again, things like lazy approval, I could just respond to the email and process this out. Or, again, just like on-prem, I could simply navigate in and process the response through a task form via Nintex Forms. And the other reason why Nintex Forms and that tight integration with workflow is so important is because it gives me a lot of additional capabilities. like validation rules, like formatting rules, like the ability to consume it on a mobile device. These are things that are important because my workers may not be logging in to a standard SharePoint portal and going about their business. They may be a little bit more dynamic than that. Another really interesting thing in both the Office 365 version as well as the on-prem version, in our enterprise licensing, we have the concept of a print to PDF button. So I could say, I could take something like this and go, you know what, I want to crystallize my response here and save that out as a PDF. So with a single click right from inside of this task response form, I could go ahead and convert this to a PDF. And again, I can't impress upon this enough is the fact that, especially in SharePoint Online, this is just an app. There's no real bits to have to curate or maintain inside of SharePoint Online. It's just simply SaaS. So there's a connection between SharePoint Online and our various services that support this functionality inside of Microsoft Azure. If I click on that little PDF, look, I've got a PDF file now. Great, perfect. All the fidelity of the form is intact. I'm good to go. So I've got that if I need it. Pretty powerful. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and say approved. Save out the response. We're kind of done with what we're doing up in the cloud. And again, I don't really need to take you through the rest of the process, but the long and short of it would be, as things are happening, we're processing these various responses, we're going through and capturing the data. The last thing I would just show you is the one other way of responding to things like tasks. I can do that through that Nintex mobile experience. But this is also a great way to point out that maybe I have occasion to build some kind of mobile application for data collection, and I would like to allow my users to use that on the go. So instead of just responding to a task via this standard type of Outlook and SharePoint type of interface, or even email, maybe I want to use something completely different like Nintex Mobile. So what you see right here is my iPad, and down at the bottom I've got Nintex Mobile installed. So I'll go ahead and just tap on Nintex Mobile. And again, this is the, excuse me, this is our freely available app. So really the only dependency is just having access to our workflow and forms. And these will go ahead and start populating inside the mobile app. Powerful functionalities of the mobile app or callouts would be the fact that I have integration with my notification center. So in addition to finding out when I have a new life in Candy Crush, I also can find out when I have Nintex tasks associated to me. So it gets users to be more engaged. That's something interesting that we found out was through some research that we had performed is that click-through rates on emails can be low in the realm of 20 to 30%. Click-through rates on their mobile devices are more around 80 to 95%. So when you start bringing mobile into the equation, you also get more engagement from your users because you make it easy for them. So in this case, you're going to notice that I'm logged in as Jane. So I can go in here and go, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and tap on this. And I don't know if I've got it wired up. We're going to give it a quick shot. I think I might have it wired up, or it may not, to pull down the dock. Oh, I do. Good. So you'll notice, too, right inside of Nintex Mobile, I can get a preview of that document. So again, without having to open up ports on a firewall or anything like that, I can actually push this attachment metadata right into the Nintex mobile app for my users out in the field. So that could be an executive meeting with someone at lunch, could be somebody in an aircraft at 30,000 feet with no Wi-Fi. If they've cached their, because we support caching with Nintex Mobile, if they've simply connected up before getting onto that plane, no problem. All of these tasks and all of their forms will be available to them. And this looks and feels just like it was custom developed for this particular platform. And I didn't have to do anything. Notice how I hit submit, and quickly it went into this outbox. And again, if I was disconnected, this response would just simply sit in this outbox until connectivity was restored. So we can actually work in a completely disconnected state. So again, field service workers, executives on the go, people in the mining vertical, where there's no Wi-Fi or cellular coverage out in the middle of a forest. Lots of different scenarios where that offline capability becomes very important. Now that's processing, but as I mentioned, forms. So we can also consume the forms that we've built out inside of our environment. So you're going to notice I've got a whole bunch of different forms that are published with a Nintex mobile layout. So you'll see right at the bottom here is safety inspection. So in this case, and I'll go ahead and show this to you in just a moment, but this is simply just another layout that was made available inside of Nintex Forms. I did not have to custom code any of this. So if I go in, all the inputs and controls are all handled just like they would be with any kind of custom developed application. So you're going to notice that, things like a geolocation control, you'll see I'm up in beautiful Buffalo, New York, which actually it's about 70-odd degrees. Well, it's supposed to be about 70 degrees tomorrow. And then snow on Sunday, so you just can't win. But the point is, advanced functionality like geolocation controls, like having repeating sections inside of our apps. Notice when I click on Add, I've got a section where I can go ahead and input the data. But look at this, I also have things like barcode scanning built in. So these are all things that I would have to custom develop for, be it for an asset tracking type of solution. Maybe I want to integrate this Nintex experience into something with my logistics folks. Maybe I'm scanning files and folders with my, oops, and I bumped the button, dumped myself back out. Maybe I have other scenarios where I want to not have to custom develop a solution to do this data capture. I just want to go ahead and use this as built into my existing Forms product, which in this case would be Nintex, because we can do all of that stuff for you. So again, wanting to make this as easy and consumable for your users as possible, but we even have things like image annotation and the like. So all of these great experiences can be incorporated into this particular functionality at no additional charge. And again, I'll show you a way you could even build a custom branded version of this in just a moment. So we'll go ahead and scoot that out of the way. And again, the process is such that we could go through and keep building this out, but I want to show you how you actually go about building these kinds of assets and how easy that is to do without having to do any kind of coding. So I'm going to drill into my document library. I'm going to go right up here to the ribbon. And you'll notice here, baked right into the ribbon, I've got Nintex Forms. So if I wanted to, basically make a richer way to enter metadata against this particular item without having to write code, without having to fire up another application, traditionally things like the metadata against document library, standard out of the box, SharePoint list form. So not super exciting, but I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of there, going back into the ribbon, clicking on Nintex Forms. With a single click, I can go ahead and create what looks and feels like a custom developed form for this list, because we have templating capabilities. So we can easily go in and simply consume the various values associated with our SharePoint lists and libraries. So this really just makes my life as somebody building solutions out super easy. And even constructs like format painters and all that stuff, that's all there. So users who are familiar with using Microsoft Office, they can simply start using this without having to reinvent the wheel or relearn an entirely new skill set. At the same time, not that I want to get into the dev conversation, but if you do feel like putting your web developer hat on, we do expose things like CSS classes. So if you're comfortable using this kind of paradigm to mock up your forms and work with them, you can get as deep as you'd like, but it's still approachable by the business. So that's what we want. We want a product that scales from folks in the business all the way up to our developers. And that's what Nintex does incredibly well. Now, again, things like geolocation, hyperlinks, whatever I want, or if I want to move all these things around, it's super easy. It's all drag and drop. So I don't have to be a wizard at building these kinds of things out, because it's easy to use. I always like to point it out. I'm probably getting chuckles from the team over at Gig Werks and my counterpart here from Nintex who's on the call, but help that's genuinely helpful, I always call it out, because our help is actually an online live help, and it's context sensitive. So as you start building out your various forms and workflows, having help that is meaningful is incredibly important. It makes your life as a user of the product that much easier. But again, a lot of rich capabilities built into the product, things like the ability to integrate with SQL or make web requests. I can easily connect to those back-end line of business systems and populate data sets very, very easily. And without code, obviously. Cascading lookups, you name it. Even things like managed metadata. Probably one of the most underlooked or overlooked functions of SharePoint is managed metadata. It's just one of those things where you can build a lot of continuity into the solutions and the data that you're curating inside of your portal. And we actually have native integration with that term store type of capability in SharePoint. So very, very powerful, no need for custom code. And then on top of it, you know what? I want to make these forms consumable by users in mobile devices, for example. And I didn't want to mention it, but I'm in here now. So notice how, too, I'm inside of Chrome, and I'm actually inside of SharePoint. I'm inside of our Nintex tools. So we've actually enhanced our capabilities so that we're essentially browser agnostic. So you can use Chrome or Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer, it doesn't matter. You can use any modern browser and start building out these types of experiences. And everything's rendered inside the browser, so there's no need for a fat client to be installed on someone's desktop. So from here, again, I've built this out for multiple devices. As I mentioned, having that Nintex mobile capability, maybe I want this to look and feel like it was custom developed for a Windows desktop machine. So with a single click, I can create this layout, and everything looks great here. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger for my own amusement. Maybe I would like to add some kind of other capabilities to this, or maybe just something else. So I'll just put again, want to show that this is live. I'll grab my geolocation control and I'll drop it in here. And as I mentioned, I had a little bit of an interesting thing to show you is having metadata lead first, especially when it comes to documents. Documents, when it comes to metadata in SharePoint, capturing metadata around documents was always kind of a secondary affair. It was always something you did after the document got into SharePoint. Well, by being able to modify a form against a document library, I can easily go ahead and publish this form out. And I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. So we're going to go ahead and publish it. Now I'll go ahead and close this. And if I go into my properties dialog, for any one of these documents, notice how now it's going to be an Nintex form. So we've gone ahead and we've replaced that standard out-of-the-box SharePoint form with an Nintex form. Of course, my layout's not perfect, but it's close enough for what we're doing. But that data is now in there. What about somebody net new who's creating a document and wants to add it to this particular library? Now, for the sake of the demonstration, I'm just going to put, a little something extra on here. So we'll just put a bunch of X's on the end of this. And let's go ahead and upload this using Nintex Mobile. So I've got Nintex Mobile on this desktop as well. So I showed it to you on an iOS device, but what about folks who would like to interact with this form in a more unique way? Notice how I've refreshed this and I see documents in my list of forms. I'll go ahead and click on that, and I could customize my categories and all that stuff. But in this case, I've clicked on this, and oops, I goofed up something with my layout. But the point is, things like title, all the information that I put in here, I'm going to go ahead and just populate a bunch of dummy data. My geolocation controls even there, so on and so forth. But what I really wanted to point out here was the fact that I collected the metadata in a very discrete way. I put this in front of my users before they even started talking about the files, because I actually treat the file almost like a secondary piece of this. It's not as important as the metadata, because the metadata is really typically driving these types of things. So I want to make sure I grab the right pieces of information here first about this particular metadata. And then from here, I could go ahead and just hit submit and push this document back up into SharePoint without, again, any need for custom code. Oops, and I minimized too far. Let's go ahead and close this little guy down. And if I do a refresh, notice my document's in here. And all the metadata was captured without, again, any need to make the document essentially go first. So it's just another way that makes building solutions out that much easier, because you don't always have to rely on custom development. So pretty powerful. Now, as a segue, typically I'll get into talking about the analytics component, but just as a quick, a brief departure, what I'd like to talk about, because we've already talked about Nintex Mobile, just showing you the ability to do a custom branding type of scenario with Nintex Mobile. So I'm just going to minimize this for a second and show you a portal that lives completely inside of Microsoft Azure, and really the takeaway on this side of the equation is, again, I want to build a rich way of collecting metadata from my users in the field. Maybe I want to have users interact with tasks in that very discrete, custom app kind of way. But I don't want to write a custom application. But I don't want to use necessarily the free version of Nintex Mobile, because my users, they're not real fond of putting in URLs to servers, and they don't want to have to know which type of credentials to use. Maybe I have an MDM solution like AirWatch or Intune, and I want to be able to deploy this app to my users without having to have them do anything really. I just want to apply it to the policy and have it show up on their device. Well, enter Nintex App Studio. So the Nintex App Studio allows me to build out a custom version of Nintex Mobile. So in this case, you're going to see I've already built one here called Bradco Mobile. So we're just going to go in and edit it. But if I created new, it would look very similar to this interface where I get to give the app a name. I can give it a description, URL scheme. We can even do pretty unique things like deep linking. So you can actually link other custom apps you have back into Nintex Mobile and pass data over to it. So pretty neat. From here, too, I can do things like specify what types of accounts I want to allow to interface with this mobile app. So I can have multiple types of accounts. And notice here, too, I can pre-bake in things like URLs, because asking a user to input that kind of stuff is usually a little tricky. So I can essentially bake that right into the experience itself. So pretty cool stuff. From there, I can target specific platforms. So again, when people think about custom development, they're like, oh gosh, I've got to learn other languages, or I've got to pay, a team to build out these apps for these various platforms. No, with us, it's clicking a button. We want to try and make it easy. You load up your artwork, so I can stick a bunch of artwork in there. So in this case, my fancy Bradco Mobile logo, but obviously your corporate colors, corporate logos can be put in there. Going along the lines of the corporate color, if I have a specific color scheme that I want to apply to my app, again, it's as easy as just clicking on various dials and toggles. So that's the power of having a tool like this, is that I don't need to be a developer to customize this experience. So very, very easy stuff. And then on top of it, the last piece that really makes it compelling is when I showed you the free version of Nintex Mobile, that guy will simply surface all of the forms that you have access to inside of your SharePoint environment. And that's great, but the problem with that is if you start building lots of stuff with Nintex, which is a problem we hope you have, but at the same time, it could be overwhelming for your users. Perhaps you have an operations team that only cares about one specific process, and it's really encapsulated in one set of forms and one set of tasks. What I can do with this App Studio app is I can easily scope it down to hide everything but a specific form or a specific task or what have you, and then deliver that experience to the user. So from here, all I would have to do to make this app be built, essentially, is click on this little button that says Save and Build. And then automatically up in Azure, this is going to go ahead and run through its gyrations, and you'll get an email when it's done. And then from there, you can download the bits, deploy it with your solution, or we've even gone a step further going, you know what? Mobile device management is still kind of an area that's a little bit in flux with a lot of people, but they really want to use customized mobile apps. Well, we can even do what we call app deploy. So you can simply build out a distribution list, and that's just email addresses. And you can essentially send out an email to your users, and they can simply tap on a link and download the app to their device without any need for an MDM solution. So that's a very compelling aspect because, again, don't need to get into, I can still have that essentially a top-down governed version of Nintex Mobile that's been customized, but I don't have to really have any users, go through gyrations of getting it onto their machine other than simply tapping a link in their email. So pretty powerful. Now let's go ahead and close that. So Hawkeye is the other piece that's really incredibly important here. We really want to take processes that we've automated and get heads-up telemetry on them. So if I quickly just jump back into my environment, I've got a legal team here at my Acme company, and they do lots of contract management. So they got lots of contract stuff going on here in SharePoint, and they really need to get a good heads up on all these different contracts that they're generating, how much money is associated with them, are they writing lots of contracts, are we making money, etc. So again, we've automated the process with Nintex, but we really need to get more insights into that process. Well, again, Hawkeye does that for us. So again, living up in Microsoft Azure is Nintex Hawkeye. So this portal will simply allow data to be aggregated from executions of Nintex workflows, and we can apply what we call lenses to that data set. And there's two types of lenses. There would be a usage lens and a process intelligence lens. And it really, in the most concise way I can put it, is one is all about process data, meaning telemetry from a workflow. So things like start and end times, how many workflows I've published, workflows where they live by site, how many instances of those various workflows I have, what kind of actions are being executed, task participation. So all that kind of telemetry about a workflow, which in and of itself is very valuable information, but at the same time, maybe I need to, in association with just understanding what kind of money I'm saving on a workflow or what I'm doing with a workflow, maybe I want to get rich insights about the data, the business data that's being manipulated by a workflow. So that's where the process intelligence lens comes into play. So again, beauty of all of this, no code. So I can simply build out a dashboard. Notice here we're using what's known as Microsoft Power BI Embedded. So we're actually including this in your subscription to the product. So there's no additional costs to use this capability. But what you're seeing is Power BI Embedded can surface business data from the workflow itself. So things like my fictitious contract management scenario, I can see stages that contracts are in and dollar amounts that are associated with these various contracts. So lots of great data that can be visually consumed without having to dig through, some kind of esoteric spreadsheet. So just a lot of great information. And again, these insights are really important because I can start looking at things like, gee whiz, you know what? It looks like my Seattle office is generating a lot more contracts than the folks in LA. Why is that? So this type of data just becomes incredibly important because I could really get a good feel for why that is and who is participating in this data set. So gone are the days of just having to build dashboards out in SharePoint. I can actually use Power BI to visualize these kind of data sets and then maybe find out where I have SLA infringements, where I'm having issues with that particular group getting data back to the business, etc. So I can really fine-tune things in a much more discrete kind of way. And then really the last piece of this is on top of this great analytical functionality built into Hawkeye, I can feed this to any other data source. So if I'm using a full version of Power BI, for example, it's included in my Microsoft licensing, or I'm using another platform like ClickView or Tableau, I can easily consume this data via an OData connection. So this is all standards driven underneath the covers. So we can use the built-in stuff, we can feed it over to any other analytics platform. Heck, it could be Excel. Excel has pivot tables, so I can easily consume this data and build very rich ways of displaying this. Plus I could maybe incorporate this data set into other business analytics reporting that I'm doing across my enterprise. So very, very powerful tool set, and this is all part of the new Nintex. And I know I'm running up toward the tail of the call, but I did promise to show it, so I'm at least going to give you a little quick snapshot of it, and that would be what we're calling Nintex Workflow Cloud. So all of these things that I'm showing you, Hawkeye will be able to plug into NWC as well, but and actually it can span all of your environments. So you can actually aggregate data with Hawkeye from on-prem versions of SharePoint with Nintex, SharePoint Online, as well as the forthcoming Nintex Workflow Cloud. But Nintex Workflow Cloud is a really powerful platform. It again lives completely inside of Microsoft Azure, and it's not dependent on any specific platform. So what you're seeing right here is my workflow screen. So I only have one published workflow. If I had many workflows published, they would all show up in here. This is my brand new tenant, so forgive it for being a little bit vanilla. I just don't have a whole lot in here yet. Again, the product is going into general availability on Tuesday of next week. That's the anticipated release date. But things like my instantiations of workflow, my workflow history, I can see all of that in a rich web-based dashboard. From here I can build out specific users for different things. Tasks can be assigned without a dependency on a SharePoint task. And then connections. I can plug this particular workflow into, or any of my workflows, into lots of different systems. And notice here if I go to define a connection, I've got lots of different connectors. So these are just some of the connectors that are available to you in our advanced preview. We're expecting next week to have even more in here. So, but things like Google Drive, Dropbox, Dynamics CRM, any version of SQL that you could imagine, Salesforce, etc. So all of these different platforms we can essentially connect to seamlessly. And you go, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, if I simply click right up here on Create a Workflow, you'll see the rich new Nintex Workflow cloud design interface is loading up. So very similar look and feel to what we're doing with our on-prem products and SharePoint Online-based products. And this is actually, the look and feel is actually being cascaded back into our other products. So we're trying to build continuity across all of our products. And again, we understand that you have workloads that span all of these different areas. But the beauty of Nintex Workflow Cloud is I can easily, plug this into, say, Salesforce, and when a new lead comes into Salesforce, I can go ahead and pick up all of these different types of variables from that Salesforce object. So all of this can happen automatically. And notice when I select a variable to pick up from Salesforce, it even creates variables in Nintex Workflow Cloud for me. So this is really all about making my life easy. I can listen for all these events, and then from here, I can do things like send notifications to people. I could go ahead and do conditional branching. I could, running if a condition is true or not. I can, create looping constructs. And all of this stuff is something that I can easily do, again, without having to run any kind of, write any kind of custom code. So this becomes a very easy affair. And if I click on any one of these, notice here, a configuration dialog just simply opens up. And then from here, I can start putting values in. I can insert referential data by inserting variables. And it's a clean web-based design interface. So we want to make this as easy as possible. And it's even worth pointing out that we've built this this modern design interface to be touch enabled too. So you can actually do this from a Surface Hub or from a tablet, Surface tablet, an iPad, doesn't matter. You can actually drag and drop with your finger and build this out. One of our founders actually used a Microsoft HoloLens headset to build out a workflow. It was actually really cool. But the point is, this kind of paradigm is something that, again, developers and non-developers alike can easily wrap their heads around, and they don't have to be kind of pulled into the quagmire of custom development syntax hell. So you can easily build this kind of stuff out. And as you can see, lots of different connectors.
Want to thank everybody for coming. Want to thank Brad for the presentation. And please do fill out the survey. We look forward to the feedback and like to share with you what we know. And hope to hear you come in the next time we do a webcast. Want to thank everybody.